Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fight Song Sports Podcast. As always, my name is Ty Hansen. Joining me, Bryson Lewis, as always. Bryson, we've got a ton to talk about yet again. But I think the first thing we both want to address is the passing of Dwayne Haskins. Obviously, earlier this week, we got the news that he had unfortunately passed, was struck by a truck on the highway. Headed to the airport. He was working out with some teammates down in South Florida, headed back to Pittsburgh. And just a really unfortunate event, not just for, a star athlete like him, but really for anybody, to get in an accident that way, just on the side of the road is very tragic. And I mean, you saw the impact throughout the organization, and not only just the Steelers, but all around the sports world. I mean, you saw, Chase Claypool post a video of him crying, and just how much that, quarterback that I believe only played one game with the Steelers in his time, had that kind of impact on his teammates. I'll let you go ahead and say a little bit about, just kind of what you thought about it.
Yeah, obviously just a really sad deal. Super talented kid, Heisman finalist at Ohio State, first round draft pick, seemed extremely well liked by everybody, all his teammates, everybody who's been around in the league, and just a super sad deal overall. So thoughts and prayers out to him, his family, his friends, his loved ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were the one who sent me the tweet initially. And I just, I couldn't believe it that, just a 24-year-old kid with tons of talent and not just, aside from the talent and his abilities or anything, just the work ethic and the drive and the passion that kid had. After he had passed, I kind of saw that video of him as a little kid in the Ohio State locker room, and saying, I want to play football here. I want to play quarterback here. And then just seeing what he did after he went to Ohio State was incredible. And it almost made you tear up seeing that, like, a little kid being able to accomplish his goals like that, setting a goal at that age and being able to accomplish it and set all sorts of Ohio State records and, get drafted into the NFL, and just a really tragic deal. And as you said, thoughts and prayers out to not only his family and his close ones, but also the Steelers organization and, all of his teammates and faculty and staff and everybody impacted by it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a really sad deal. And hopefully we just don't see too much stuff like this in the upcoming year, because obviously the last couple of years have been very, very difficult with pandemic, and a lot of people have seemingly passed as well. So hopefully we just don't see any more of that throughout this year.
For sure. I mean, always want everybody in the best of health and, just everything good to happen, especially in a sport like football and in the NFL. So we'll continue to move on and get into the rest of our episode here. We had a busy weekend. The, best golf tournament in the world, the Masters, was this weekend. Had some college kids play in that. One of the great things about that event is there's always amateurs that are playing in it. Kind of a rough weekend I shouldn't say weekend because they didn't make it to the weekend, but a rough week for all the amateurs. 0 amateurs were able to make the cut. And if people don't know, Augusta National gives out a silver cup to the low amateur there at Augusta for the Masters. And you do have to make the cut to win that award. Very, very, very successful, players have won that award. Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Crenshaw, Nicklaus, tons and tons and tons, Sergio Garcia, and tons of who have gone on to win the Masters later. Obviously none able to make the cut this year, which I believe was 4 or over.
Yep, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, 4 over. And then, you had Austin Greaser, who led all amateurs at 7 over through 2 rounds. But, the numbers might not look good, but to go out and shoot those kind of scores at Augusta National in the Masters is incredible. James Piot, who I believe is the U.S. amateur champion right now, at Michigan State, 11 over. Aaron Jarvis at UNLV, 11 over, who I believe is the first player from the Cayman Islands to play in Masters history from there. And then Stuart Hagestad from USC, 16 over. And as I said, those numbers are pretty high, and obviously you're not making the cut, but anytime you're playing at Augusta and, playing at Augusta as an amateur is very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I mean, there were a lot of super, super talented professional players that didn't make the cut this year, like Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, guys that have won several majors. So, I mean, to go out there and play is, of course, you've never played. Basically, every other player out there in the field has probably played it at least once. And I mean, seven over, excuse me, for Austin Greaser is not that bad of a score. I mean, only three off the cut. Of course, you've never played before. You haven't seen it until this week. And I mean, it's the Masters. It's extremely difficult. But the conditions they were playing in did him
Yeah.
no favors at all.
Yeah. Yeah. The conditions were obviously incredibly difficult. But also just kind of the atmosphere has to be just mind blowing for them. Just playing in a professional golf event of any sorts as an amateur, it has to be difficult dealing with that environment. But I mean, it's definitely no shame going out and shooting 7 over at Augusta National.
Yeah, absolutely not. And it'll be an experience that they'll never forget. And I'm sure several of these players will learn from in the future the next time that they get out there and play as a professional.
For sure. And as I mentioned, there have been some very, very successful individuals play in the Masters as an amateur, and some making the cut, some missing, but just even that experience has to be incredible. Former Texas player Scotty Sheffler obviously goes on to win, holds out over Rory McIlroy, who kind of made a Sunday surge. He looked solid all weekend. Just got the lead, I believe, on Friday and just never gave it up. Yeah, he dominated, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even on Sunday, things looked a little hairy. Cam Smith 2 under in the first two holes, and Scotty's taking relief from behind a scoreboard way left on three. And then he chunks his approach shot, his pitch shot up to the green, and he's short, but then Cam Smith immediately follows it up. And you're like, well, Cam's probably not going to tie it here, but I mean, Scotty's probably not making a score. And then he chips in for par. I mean, and really
Birdie,
never looked
wasn't
back
it? I'm
from
pretty
there.
sure he birdied it. I think he made it three
Um,
there.
he might have. I don't remember if he made
I think
three
it
or
was
four.
one. I think it was one behind the scoreboard, and then got relief, and then two short, and then chipped in three. I think it was
Yeah,
birdie there.
I think
Yeah,
you're
but
correct.
it looked like a for sure five
Yeah,
or worse.
yeah,
And you walk out of there with a birdie. Yeah, I think at that point, obviously it was early. It was only the third hole, but at that point, I think it was kind of like, okay, this might be his week.
yeah. And then I mean, it got a little hairy later, and Cam Smith made birdie on 11, and then goes to 12 and dunks it in the water. Something that we've seen several times. It's just a pivotal point. I believe Jordan hit it in the water the year that he choked his lead. Um, Molinari hit it in the water there when he was in the
Mm-hmm.
lead in 19 before Tiger went on to win. I believe Brooks might have hit it in the water there that same year as well. And I mean, Scotty just never looked back. Rory made his charge, and Scotty could absolutely hear the roars. And the very next hole, 6 it to 3 feet, tap in
Yeah.
birdie, and it was. I mean, you knew it was over from there.
Yeah, for sure. He dominated all weekend. And looking forward, you got the PGA Championship at Southern Hills coming up. When he was at Texas, played the Big 12 Championship there, and has been, very positive about that golf course, and said that he thinks that it's probably his favorite golf course in the world. And so with the way he's playing right now, and he has experience there, obviously when he was at Texas, played there in the Big 12 Championship, and then obviously loves the course. And with how hot he is, I mean, he might be a lock again for the PGA Championship coming up here in the end of May.
Yeah, absolutely, and that'll be an exciting opportunity. I think both of us are going to get up there at some point. I know you said you're going to be there on Wednesday. I'm still
Yeah.
figuring out what day I want to get up there. Maybe I get up there on a Wednesday and we do a little on the site pod or something like that. You never know.
We might have
Um,
to we might have to make something work there.
yeah, but exciting opportunity, and obviously Scotty very familiar with that course, like you said, and it's a beautiful course.
Yes,
It'll
it
be my
is.
first time ever seeing it in person, and I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I fortunately got to go to the senior PGA last year when it was there, and it is just truly a breathtaking course up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which you would never, not to throw shade on Tulsa, but it is Tulsa, and you wouldn't expect that being in Tulsa, but it is a beautiful place. But the Masters had my full attention this weekend. And there was another big event. Nebraska spring game was on Saturday, and admittedly, I did not get to watch a ton of it. Most of my attention was focused on golf. However, I did get to see some bits and pieces. I was also working at the time, just kind of flipping channels back and forth. And it's a spring game. It's always hard to kind of get a good idea of what the team's looking like, especially because you got things like the offensive and defensive line where, okay, is our defensive line good or is our offensive line bad? Is our secondary bad or our receivers and quarterbacks just good? It gets kind of tough to tell, but I was watching the Masters and I flipped over the channel and I caught just this one play just right at the snap, and I didn't really even get to like process what was going on. And so I flipped the channel and the ball snapped, and quarterback, is in the shotgun, takes a couple steps back and just fires a laser to a receiver that was like double covered, but was open at the same time. There was a little window that he could have fitted in. And I mean, it would have taken a really experienced quarterback to make that throw and fit it in that window. And it was complete. And I was like, whoa, okay. I haven't seen that in a while. And I was like, okay, well, Casey Thompson looks good. And then, they flipped back to the quarterback and it was Chuba Purdy. And I was like, wow, okay, that's going to be our, backup more than likely. And he made that throw. And that was just my first impression right there was, I mean, what a throw, what an experienced throw into coverage, but was open. It wasn't a bad decision. It was a good decision. He was open if he could fit it into that window. And if he missed, it was going to be bad, but he threw it into that tight window and got it there. And I just felt like that was something we haven't seen in 4 years under Adrian Martinez. Definitely a good athlete and a great quarterback, but, was never the best thrower of the football. His main asset was his legs. And seeing that, especially out of a backup quarterback, that really, really surprised me. And I loved it. And it was exciting to see. And then I've gone back and just kind of watched some highlights. I haven't gone back and rewatched the full game. I felt like our run blocking for the offensive line was pretty solid. It's tough to tell because you're blowing plays dead. The running backs are just getting touched and the quarterbacks are getting touched, and it's tough to tell how much plays are really going to develop. Because you're not really breaking any tackles. But I thought our running backs looked explosive. You've got Anthony Grant, who was out there, and Jaquez Yant, who looked really good. And then some of our like running backs down the list, who guys who, I really even struggle to remember their names, just because they're that far down. They look good. I mean, they looked explosive, and I was really pleased with how developed even our lower on the depth chart running backs were. I thought they looked really good. But the pass blocking is I think going to be a big question mark this year. I felt like the guards and centers were okay, and all the pressure was just really kind of coming off the edge. Our tackles just getting beat, and it might impact the quarterback differently in a spring game because you're sitting there, you got the green jersey on, and you're not going to get hit, so you can just kind of stand in there and you don't have to worry about it. You can keep your eyes downfield and you don't have to worry about, kind of having that pocket presence of, where are my defenders at? Are my tackles getting beat? Did they hold them? You don't really have to worry about that in a spring game because you're not going to get rocked from the blind side. You can just stand there and take it. And so, that might allow them to make some better throws downfield. But on the flip side, as I said, it is tough to judge, is the offensive line bad or is our defensive line good? Garrett Nelson looked phenomenal. He was a big playmaker for us last year, kind of a linebacker, DN kind of guy. Will play a little bit of both. He looked phenomenal. I was really impressed with him. Got a lot of pressure off the edge, which again, I don't know if that's good or bad. But I mean, he looked to be an animal, and for a defensive line that I think this year might be a weak spot if we don't get somebody to step up. It definitely was a positive to see. And then just one more thing I want to touch on was some of the new looks we have under offensive coordinator Mark Whipple. Last year, Nebraska had a huge issue with getting the ball in the end zone. Our offense numbers were phenomenal until we got into the red zone, and then we just stalled. And, we got into the red zone, and I saw some different looks that I think we hadn't seen in the past. We saw some some concepts where, you've got receivers kind of, crossing each other at the line of scrimmage and, kind of the pick play that's kind of popular now and getting guys open on that, quick little 2-3 yards, 5 yards and out, that we haven't seen before. And we were getting receivers open on that. And I think that is going to be really helpful in when we get down into the red zone. Because last year it was just brutal. And unfortunately we did miss a couple field goals. I believe it was one field goal and an extra point, which I'm really tired of seeing. I mean, it killed us last year. And if it does again this year, I think I might lose it. But I haven't gone back and watched the entire game. It's just been highlights. I don't know how much you have seen, if you have even, watched it all, but, have you seen any of it?
I've mostly just seen some social media reaction. I also saw that the tackles were really, really struggling, which can kill you in a real game setting. We'll just have to see how they progress through the summer and fall. And then obviously, shout out message board geniuses. Some overreaction on Nebraska message boards saying, "Oh, 4 wins, fire Scott Frost," all these things based on a spring game. And I will just say it's never too important of a game. I mean, it's good to see new faces, new schemes, new concepts. But in terms of like my experience with spring games, Baker Mayfield had a horrible spring game before he took the starting job in 2015. Kyler Murray had a horrible spring game before he went on to win the Heisman in 2018. And I believe Sam Bradford also had a very poor spring game the year that he went on to win the Heisman. So it's really never materializes into what people expect it to. And I think it's just important to kind of hold that perspective and know that it's never as good as it seems and never as bad as it seems either.
Yeah, I agree. And also when the scoring is all crazy, however they did it this year, I couldn't even tell you. The points didn't matter. I watched like one drive and it was like 10-7 or something. And I was like, okay. And then like the offense was driving down the field. And at some point the defense had gained 4 points and it was 14-7 or whatever. And I was like, I don't even know how they got, like, I have no clue how they got 4 points. I think that can just kind of change the mentality and just, the fact that you're playing against guys, it's just it's an inter squad, whatever. At the end of the day, it's a practice with 50,000 people there. It is just practice, but it's also important. I mean, who's going to show up and bring the competitiveness in the spring game? You get one time to show it to the fans, and who's going to show up and bring it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just touch on a couple OU football points real quick. Nothing crazy going on there. We do have an official, kind of rule that how they're going to run the spring game. They're going to split up into 2 teams basically and draft players. So Dylan Gabriel will be on one team, and whoever they think the backup quarterback will be, whether that's Nick Evers, Ralph Rucker, he'll be on the other team. They'll do the similar things with like their top 2 offensive tackles, offensive guards, and then they'll just go draft style straight down the list. But there's really nothing else on the OU football side of things that's going on right now. Just kind of working towards the spring game, and
a lot of other schools have had their spring games as well this weekend. I know I saw Clemson had theirs. Not sure who else. Clemson obviously will have some different looks this year with Venables obviously gone and at Oklahoma now. But we're at that time of the year now where and there's not a specific date for every team. But I did see that Clemson was another one that had gotten theirs out of the way this weekend.
Yeah, I know that OU, they'll be on the 23rd, obviously, as we've discussed on here. But they're going to be the same weekend as, I believe, Texas. And then USC is also scheduling their spring game on that day. And I want to say maybe, no, not Texas A&M. They were basically empty at their spring game this weekend. I don't even think they got to 20,000.
Yeah, and then I think Purdue. I saw Purdue was theirs, had theirs as well this weekend. But
yeah, so we'll just kind of watch for that, see if there's anything we can actually take away from that. It is kind of just a glorified scrimmage for the most part, but new staff, bunch of new players. We'll just have to see how it goes. But we'll go ahead and flip it over to basketball now. We're going to start with OU basketball. They had some big news break yesterday morning. Elijah Harkless surprisingly entered the portal. He had obviously previously tweeted he was going to return to Oklahoma, and it had been reported by guys like John Rothstein, Fran Fraschilla, that he was going to return. He enters the portal, And I know once the season ended, like the month after the season, there were a lot of rumors that a couple Division I programs, Power 5 programs back in his home state of California were maybe trying to tamper with him a little bit, get him to enter the portal. And I think Oklahoma expected that they hadn't done enough work and it was all good. I mean, there were guys reporting that he was returning as late as last week. Um, and I think it just kind of took everybody by surprise. But on the flip side of things, A.K. Muane and Rick Asanza officially enter the portal. Those were two that were not surprises at all. Muane most likely going to follow Coach Patrick out to Sacramento State. And then Rick Asanza, not really sure what's going to be with him. He never really got on the floor this year outside of early season blowouts. So we'll just kind of see. And then Mo Gibson, still no news on him. He was obviously pictured working out with the basketball team last week in a tweet that they sent out. I wouldn't read into that too much. I am personally leaning towards him being gone at this point. No real news there. It's just kind of a gut feeling I've got. But if he's gone and Harkless does not come back, because he can still come back if he chooses to withdraw from the portal, OU will have 5 spots to fill for the upcoming season. And right after Harkless entered the portal later that afternoon, Joe Bamsil from George Washington University, guard, officially committed to Oklahoma out of the transfer portal. He's a big guard, 6'4", averaged 16 points and 5 rebounds last year for George Washington, starting in 29 of the 30 games he appeared in. He's a guy that's already transferred once. He was originally at Virginia Tech, so he will need a waiver to play, but with how the NCAA run those things, you just never know. His head coach was fired this season at George Washington, so I'm kind of expecting him to get a waiver personally, but we'll see. OU kind of had an in with him. Coach Emmanuel Dildy was at Northwestern as an assistant before going to Texas and then later OU, and Bamsil was committed to him coming out of high school. But like I said, average 16 points, 5 rebounds. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to fill it up for Oklahoma, hopefully. Obviously, losing Harkless, averaging 10, and then Gibson, who was your leading scorer, and really down the stretch, your best player by far, not even really close. You're going to need guys that can fill it up, and I think Bamsil is a guy that can. So with that, they're going to have probably 4 spots remaining if Gibson does not come back. No one really on the radar right now outside of guard Tyreek Key from Indiana State. He's familiar with Porter Moser. He played against Loyola in the Missouri Valley Conference. He averaged 17 and 5 last year, and he's just kind of taking visits right now. He's originally from Tennessee, and he will be visiting them over the next couple days before going to Texas Tech over the weekend, and then wrapping up with Oklahoma, who will get the final visit. That could be a big player. We'll see if he comes out of his home state of Tennessee uncommitted, and then Texas Tech, obviously, perennial kind of top 15, top 25 program the last few years. And I mean, Tennessee obviously was a 3 seed. So it's 2 big schools that Oklahoma's fighting with over this guy. And then we'll just kind of see where they go from there.
Yeah, they got a lot to fill. Obviously with Harkless leaving, that's going to be a big loss. And one that has kind of been, he was rumored to kind of come back to OU. Obviously had that injury that knocked him out at the end of the year. But that could be the reason he is leaving. He got that injury, and I think, you can take that as a sign as, kind of, okay, my time here is done and I'm looking for a fresh start somewhere else. But you never know. I mean, you got some spots to fill, and with how, not just basketball, but all sports now, the transfer portal is huge. And you can go get guys that have experience. And, when they're a borderline NCAA tournament team last year, should they've gotten in? Probably, ultimately didn't. You got to be looking to bring back some experience. And I think you hit that transfer portal because your goal next year is obviously to get over that hump and get into the NCAA tournament. As is every team's, goal to get in, but they're right there. I mean, they were right there this year. Could have arguably gotten in, but I think you get that experience from the transfer portal and get guys that have played, 2-3 seasons already versus an 18-year-old high school kid. And even maybe some guys that have played in the tournament in years past, that could just be huge. I mean, they got Tanner Groves, last year who was from Eastern Washington and played in the tournament. And was, a fairly big player for OU this year. And I mean, the mold is there. You got, obviously Porter Mosier, who had some historic runs. You've got experience. And I think you just continue that trend and probably just hit the transfer portal to fill up the rest of your team. I mean, it's there. I mean, there's players there's players that want to play at Oklahoma. I just think that's going to be the new wave of college basketball, not just for OU, but for pretty much every team, honestly.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'll go back to that point you made about Harkless. He did have that injury, and I think maybe that is definitely something that pushed him towards the portal. We don't know how severe it was. We know that he had surgery. We know that he was on crutches just a couple weeks ago. And I mean, if it's an ACL, he's probably not starting at the beginning of the year next season. And maybe that's something that he thinks he can go somewhere else where maybe they're losing a few more guys and he's been promised a starting role by another coach. You never know. That's just one theory out there. But I think Joe Bamsil is a big pickup because even if he doesn't get a waiver this year, he's still going to, if he doesn't get a waiver, he will have 2 years remaining. If he does, he'll have 3 to play. And obviously in the age of the transfer portal, a guy's probably not going to transfer 3 times unless there's just major concerns. And that's a guy that stability is what he brings, and that's a massive thing. And then Tyreek Key, I think he's only going to have 1 year left. I believe he's a grad transfer. So just going to be kind of like a Jordan Goldwire, I think, maybe a little bit better offensively, but basically just a 1 year rental on him. But that's about it with OU basketball. We're going to just kind of keep watching, see who they make contact with in the portal, see if they bring any more visitors in, and we'll keep you guys updated there. But we'll go ahead and toss it over to golf now. And the OU men had the weekend off. They've got the Thunderbird Collegiate coming up this weekend. That will be their final event of the regular season before Big 12 match play and stroke play come in. And then the women had the Bruzzy tournament hosted by North Texas out in Fort Worth. Another not so great showing out of them. They finished tied 9th out of 14 teams at 20 over. That's the end of their regular season. And they will move on to Big 12 stroke play in 2 weekends.
Yeah, obviously the men have a pretty big tournament that they gotta get ready for this weekend. Haven't been playing their best golf, but also have had a lot of guys gone to play in professional events, which is important. But you got to turn around in the Big 12. They'll obviously make the postseason and do big things there. But you want to be playing your best golf at that time. Playing your best golf at the beginning of the season doesn't do you much. You got to play your best golf late in the season in May and June, and that's when it matters. I mean, you could be the best team in February and March and get knocked out pretty early once you get to postseason, and that just ends up being a disappointing year. So I think it's a big weekend for them. They can start to turn things around, but they're also really damn good. And I don't worry about it much. I think it's just more of an attitude thing, more than anything. I mean, obviously the talent is there and the expectations are there for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we saw the bite them in the butt last year. They were basically playing 4 bags on 5 for the entirety of the postseason. Garrett Reband was just not playing well down the stretch, and it ended up costing them in the national championship. They lost 3-2, and maybe he's playing a little bit better. They beat Pepperdine in that final match, but that's something they're going to have to get right going into the postseason here. They've got one more regular season tournament, and then they'll work towards Big 12 stroke play, and they really got to get it rolling again here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Big 12 golf is as good as it gets. OU, OSU, Texas. I mean, just conference is just always loaded for golf. It's probably, I mean, those are probably the 3 of the best teams in the country right there. Just, OU, OSU, and Texas. And, that it might be the best conference tournament, honestly, with those 3 teams. That's welcome to Big 12 golf. You get the best of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, OU, they've never done particularly well in the Big 12 tournament. I mean, last year, I think they finished 3rd or 4th. I don't remember exactly which one it was, and then they went on and played in the national championship match. So I mean, it's just a game of how you're playing on any given day.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and jump back over to Nebraska here. Their men's golf team. They finished 9th out of 13 teams in the Stitch Intercollegiate, which is hosted by NC State. Not the best showing out of them. Tom Westenberger led the team, finished 6 over, tied for 24th. He was the leader for Nebraska. They've got one more regular season event left. That is going to be the Hawkeye Invitational, obviously hosted by the University of Iowa at Finkbein, I think is how you say it, Finkbein Golf Club in Iowa City, which is obviously Iowa's home course and is a phenomenal place if you've never seen it. Beautiful out there. However, the weather is not supposed to be good. It's supposed to be like mid 40s and raining on Sunday and mid 40s on Saturday. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know if if that's going to go through or, maybe gets pushed up or bumped back. And then obviously after that, you head into the Big Ten tournament, which I'm not sure where the Big Ten tournament is this year. I haven't looked, but, knowing that you might be done for the regular season headed into the Big Ten, you got a lot of work to do if you want to advance, and especially if you're not getting to play that last weekend. That's a lot of golf you're missing out right there. With that could just be that last little tune up before you head into the most important part of your season.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, I believe they took like 2 or 3 weeks off, correct?
Yeah, they were off for quite a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a super, super difficult thing. And obviously in Nebraska, you just never know what you're going to get from the weather. And when you're stuck inside all off season and then you're taking 2-3 weeks off between tournaments, it's always going to be tough to get going in that first tournament back. So they're just going to have to kind of continue to build here.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking literally for the next probably 10 days, mid 40s, low 50s in up here in Nebraska. And, you can kind of suck it up and get outside a little bit, but I promise you that's not very fun. And it's tough to play your best golf when, it's cold and it's windy too. You can't really go out there and score real well and be at the top of your game when, obviously when it's cold and windy. But with that being said, everybody else has playing it as well. If you're at an event, everybody's playing under the same conditions, but I mean, and it is the Big Ten. It's not that, Minnesota or Michigan State are getting any better conditions than what Lincoln, Nebraska is getting. So that's kind of the reason kids don't play Big Ten golf.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see what they do this upcoming weekend, and we're going to go ahead and switch it over to baseball now. And we'll talk OU first. They beat Oral Roberts. Obviously, we talked about last podcast leading up to it. Historically, a pretty good baseball program. They beat them 8-2 in the midweek game, and then they headed to Stillwater, Oklahoma for a big, big series against Oklahoma State. And they lose the series 1-2. They won the first one 8-7. And late in the second game, stop me if you've heard this before, they're up big. You think they've got it in the bag. It's 7-4. And they give up 4 runs in the last 2 innings out of the bullpen and lose. And then I think that just kind of set the tone for the last game. They end up losing 9-4. Never really had a chance in that game. I think they went down 3-0 in the second inning. And it's just kind of the same issues they've had all season. And on a positive note, they do finish 2-2 against Oklahoma State in the regular season, which you take two games out of 4 against the top 25, top 5-10 program every single year. I think you'll take that, but it's really just kind of a sign of where they are right now coming out of the bullpen. They just can't hang on to leads late in games.
It is absolutely plaguing them right now. I mean, it's just got to be so frustrating to have a lead late and not even be able to get, to get just a couple innings out of your bullpen. Not even, I mean, 7-4, you've got 2 runs to play with. you don't even have to be absolutely locked down. You can get hit around just a little bit and give up 2 runs and still win. It's just the big innings. They just cannot. It's just plaguing them right now. And a deep bullpen is going to win you games in the postseason. And when you got a thin bullpen and you got to let that starter ride a little bit longer every game throughout the entire season because you don't have pitchers you trust in the bullpen. That adds up, and when you get into the late part of the year, into regionals, super regionals, and eventually the World Series, if you make it there, that's a lot of pitches for your starters that they've had to eat up during the whole season because your bullpen's not very good. It's tough to rely on starting pitchers like that, and baseball is a huge game for momentum and attitude, and the attitude in the dugout when your starter's coming out of the game and you got 3, 4, 5 run lead, and then all of a sudden you give up 1 or 2. It's got to be like, like here we go again. You know what I mean? Like, and it's standing out there on the mound too. You go out there and you maybe walk a guy, extra base hit, sac fly or something, and all of a sudden you give up. You got 1 or 2 on the board, and you just got to be like, man, like we're doing this again, and it's just got to snowball on them. I mean, it's just got to be the elephant in the room in that dugout, like we have another lead. Our offense gives us another lead, another 7-8 run game, and then we blow it away. It's got to be frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of here we go again, they are facing Texas Tech tonight, who's ranked 4th in the country. It is technically a non-conference game. They're playing it in Amarillo, and the wind's blowing like crazy out there right now. Winds in the 30s and 40s constantly. But they were up 8-2. And they went into the 7th inning up 11-6, and they are still currently in the 7th inning. It is 11-9. OU still holding on to the lead, but I mean, up 8-2, and now it's 11-9, and they're definitely thinking, "Here we go again" right now.
It was 11-6, and Texas Tech had 5 hits, by the way, as well. So more runs than hits is never good. That is never, or it's good for the offense, not good for your pitching staff. That's never good. Texas Tech had made 4 errors as well too. So OU obviously able to capitalize on that. But they're not hitting the ball. You're doing it to yourself. I mean, you can give up 5 hits and not even score a run. And then 6 runs on 5 hits is not very good. And OU has left 13 runners on base as well. So
yep. So just kind of the same issues that's been plaguing them all season are plaguing them again tonight, and we will see if they can actually hold on to that lead tonight for a big win. It would be, I mean, top 5 team in Texas Tech. Yeah. But they host Pacific and Lamar this weekend. They'll play Pacific on Thursday and Saturday, and Lamar on Friday. Regardless of what happens in this game against Tech tonight, you have to take 3 of those games. They're at home. And you're really not going to get more opportunities against teams like these for the rest of the season as you get into Big 12 play. You're playing Texas, TCU, Tech, and you'll get into the Big 12 tournament and probably have to play at least one of those teams again if you make any noise in that tournament. So you have to take advantage this weekend. That's 3 very, very winnable games. So we'll just kind of see how they fare there.
Yeah, Lamar is definitely not a pushover either. That is a pretty good mid-major team down there in Texas. They run a really good program down there, but you got to imagine you're getting at least 3 this weekend. And if it's not, it's going to be frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just kind of continue to see how they progress, if they can make progress in their bullpen. One final point on OU baseball. D1 baseball has them as a 3 seed in the Fayetteville Regional right now. Obviously, with the way their bullpen looks and their backup pitchers, probably not where you want to be. Obviously, you'd love to be in the postseason, but regional play is different. I mean, you can't just ride your starting pitchers the whole time, and that's the thing that's been plaguing them the whole season.
Yeah, and and one thing I will say on that, SEC baseball is completely different. Big 12 is very, very good. Don't get me wrong. Tons of talent there, but just the atmosphere in the SEC is completely different than anything you see. I mean, Texas and Oklahoma State probably bring it pretty good. And, TCU and Texas Tech obviously do a good job as well. But I mean, that just doesn't even compare to what you're seeing at Arkansas, LSU, Mississippi State. You can every single SEC school, and they better get ready for it though, because I mean that's what they've got coming here in a few years. Obviously joining the SEC whenever that happens, but I mean that's what you got coming up. So
Yeah, absolutely. They're gonna have to figure something out before heading to the SEC because, like you said, it's just a completely different animal out there. We'll go ahead and throw it over to you for some Nebraska baseball as they just continue to struggle.
yeah, it's not been pretty this year. Obviously, last year was a great year for Nebraska, a huge step in the right direction. And with the way the season ended last year, everybody thought that this team could really make some noise and continue to push in the right direction. And they've done a 180 and gone the complete wrong direction. I believe they've fallen to 12-18 this year so far. They lose a 1-run game to Nebraska Omaha in a midweek. Nebraska Omaha, the little brother, obviously a very, very good mid-major team. Don't get me wrong though. But Nebraska should have no issue with Nebraska Omaha. But if Nebraska continues to play like this, and I don't know if you've seen Tal Anderson, which is UNO's new field. It is phenomenal. It's incredible. It's the best in the Summit League, and it honestly rivals Haymarket in every way. It's an incredible facility, and if Nebraska continues to lose to Nebraska Omaha, and their UNO is putting that kind of money into their baseball program, things might change around the state of Nebraska, which is unfortunate to say. But after that midweek loss, they head into Rutgers, who, we weren't really sure about what that Rutgers team was going to bring. They haven't played the toughest schedule in the world, but they've been lighting it up with the sticks all year. And, I believe there's two close games. I believe a 2-run and a 1-run game in the first two. And then that last game just gets out of hand. And I believe the final is 19-1 there or something. Rutgers has like 19 or 20 hits. You just hammer Nebraska, and they really let the bats show in that game. It was frustrating because, it was at home, and, getting swept at home is just unacceptable. And it's just, everything's just going in the wrong direction. They can't win close games. They're getting blown out a lot. I swear it's like the third or fourth time they've lost by like 10 plus runs this year. They had a game against Creighton, another in-state rival, another big in-state rival. It was suspended in the 4th inning tonight, though. However, due to the weather, we've got some storms that have moved in. Obviously unclear whether that game will be finished or not. It's obviously not a conference, so we'll have to see if that gets finished. I don't even know what the score is. I didn't even look. I just saw it got suspended. No clue. Hopefully it's going well. I didn't even care to look. I didn't even want to look, honestly. But headed into this weekend, they got a 4-game series against BYU. Obviously BYU, a religious school, they do not play on Sundays. So it will be 1 on Thursday, 2 on Friday, and then 1 on Saturday. So, that's what you get when you play a religious school. BYU doesn't play on Sundays. This is Nebraska's just struggling. BYU's a little bit over 500 this year, but definitely a solid team. And Nebraska's struggling. They don't have a single qualified hitter hitting over 300, and they got a team on base percentage of 345 right now. That's not very good. That's a little over 1 out of 3 hitters is reaching base. That's just that's tough. It's tough to do any damage when that's the case. It's just kind of been everything. If the hitting's there, then the pitching hasn't been great, and then if the pitching's there, then the hitting's not great, and then you get the games where neither is good, like the 19-1 loss to Rutgers there. Scoring 1 run won't win you many games, and giving up 19 is probably not going to win you a single game. But it's just been frustrating, and I don't, at the beginning of the year I thought, okay, they're just a little bit of a slump and they can turn it around. I don't know. This might be just the team they are this year. Just a 500, maybe a little bit below 500 team. But I hope they're able to turn it around, and when they get into the Big Ten tournament, maybe they can finally show the talent a little bit and win, and because the at-large bid, it's out of the question now. You got to win the Big Ten to get in, which is just so frustrating considering that, people had them hosting a regional this year, or definitely a tough 2 seed. And then this is what they put out this year. It's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, anytime you don't have a single hitter over 300, um, that's a stat you see on teams that are performing like Nebraska is performing. And like you said, super, super disappointing season. Uh, Obviously, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament, barring a significant run to win the Big Ten tournament. Um, they just can't figure it out. It seems like. I feel like every week we come on here um, and say they've got a couple winnable games. Obviously, we knew Rutgers was going to be tough, um, and they just don't win them. They don't win the winnable games, and I don't know. I don't really think there's any other words that we use with them right now.
Yeah, and you cannot get swept at home. I mean, you can't get swept at any point, but especially at home, God, I mean, you just cannot get swept at home. You lose a tough series at home, 1 to 2 games, and maybe you lose a heartbreaker in the third game. But man, I mean, getting swept at home is just that's rough.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll switch over to softball. Maybe a little happier topic on the podcast. Obviously, both teams doing very, very well. We'll start with OU. They run ruled Tulsa in the midweek game last Wednesday. I was lucky enough to be in attendance at that one. They win 9-0. A lot of different girls played. It seemed like they switched players at every single position in the field. It seemed like, except for maybe Jocelyn Allo, I believe. That game went 5 innings. They won 9-0. And then they went into the weekend. They played Texas Tech. They swept them, beating them 11-0, 11-0, and then 21-0 in the final game on Sunday. And they now hold the record for the best start in a NCAA softball season at 36-0, another record that they have broken this year. And they'll move on to play at Texas this weekend, who is a top 15 to 20 team, depending on what polls you look at. And it will probably be their toughest test to date at this point, given that it's a series. They obviously played some tough teams in non-conference tournaments, but this is probably their toughest series. And then they've got Oklahoma State, and really in the regular season, those are probably the only 2 places you can see them dropping a game.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at their schedule right now. They've given up more than 1 run in a game only 4 times this season. I mean, it's insane. They haven't given up a run since April 1st. What is that? 20, 22, 11, 11's 22, 43 to nothing. You beat Texas Tech by this series.
Yeah. And yeah. I believe they're 36-0 and 30 of their wins have been by run rule this season. Which is just ridiculous. I don't know what
I don't even know what to say. Like, I can't even comprehend, because they're hammering everybody. Yep. And then they're playing ranked teams too, and they're beating ranked teams, run ruling ranked teams. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's historic.
That Texas. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's
beyond historic.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even, they shouldn't even be playing NCAA teams. They need to go play the USA softball team. Although they'd be playing themselves. I mean, I think this might be the USA softball team. I mean, it's insane. I haven't even looked at their stats, but there's no reason to. I mean, even stats aren't even going to comprehend what this team's doing right now. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. One thing I will add is there are still some writers out there who are voting other teams at number 1. I'm not really sure why that is. I mean, this team has won 83% of its games by run rules, 30 out of 36. They've hammered top 25 teams. I assume, it's Virginia Tech that's getting the votes. I assume it's writers that cover them. I have no idea who the voters are, but if it continues, we might have to discuss taking their vote away. I don't know. It makes zero sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe you're just doing it because it's understood that OU is number
Yeah,
one, so you're just voting for number two, and I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just kind of unexplainable. But we'll go ahead and switch it over to Nebraska softball, who is still rolling.
yeah. They're obviously one of the hottest teams in the country as well. Not quite 36 games in a row, but they've got 15 in a game, 15 games in a row going right now. They're 30-9. They run ruled Iowa in both of the games, which obviously, Nebraska Iowa, the biggest rivalry for Nebraska right now. And then getting to run rule both of them is obviously huge positive, huge 2 wins there. They're not ranked in the top 25 yet as of yesterday. Polls come out on Monday, and so as of yesterday, they were not ranked in the top 25. They're 32nd in RPI right now. I mean, I got to imagine soon they're going to be in the top 25. I just looked at D1 softball and then obviously RPI. I know there's some other polls, and I haven't really checked those. I usually just follow D1 softball and the RPI there. But I mean, 32nd RPI, just outside the top 25. You got to imagine that they're going to get in at, with just a couple more wins. I don't see how a 30-9 team, no matter who you've played, isn't ranked. I'm not really sure. They've got Minnesota, Wisconsin, Indiana, and Ohio State. I know that's not in the right order, but that's who they have left in the season. The toughest of those is going to be Ohio State. They're 24-10 this year, but they're only 4-5 in the Big Ten, and they're ranked 9th in the Big Ten right now. They're definitely the toughest opponent they have left, but they haven't played well in Big Ten play at all. I mean, it's a winnable. I think they only have like 8 games left. I'll let you quote me if I'm wrong there. But I mean, another winnable 8 games, and if they're able to do that, and they've got 23 wins in a row headed into the conference tournament, that's going to be very, very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, 15-game win streak, somehow still not ranked. I'm looking at the rankings right now. After number 13, Georgia, all but 3 teams have double-digit losses, including a Michigan team in the Big Ten that's 23-12. San Diego State 27-11. And you got to think, with even their RPI, it's just outside the top 25. But you got to think the way that they're playing, if they continue this, they're going to be ranked. And I mean, honestly, it's not a team that I think any of the top 8 seeds will want to be playing um, in a regional.
Yeah. And Nebraska beat Michigan in 2 games. The third one canceled too. So, that surprises me. But I don't know. I mean, I mean, Michigan they're 24-12. Is that what I saw there? Yeah, 24-12 right now, and 4-5 in Big Ten play. And Nebraska beat them in the 2 games that they played. But Michigan's ranked and Nebraska's not, who's 30-9. I don't know that I understand that a ton. I mean, I get the whole strength of schedule thing, but I mean, when it comes to head-to-head, they've literally played each other. Nebraska beat them both games. To me, that just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe it has something to do with history and stuff. I mean, Nebraska, I mean, it shouldn't count, but it definitely there's bias on history and stuff. And they were a 500 team last year. Michigan's a team we've seen in the Women's College World Series a few times. I don't know. It's kind of unexplainable, but if they keep rolling, eventually they will jump into that top 25.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, I mean, they've got another winnable 8 games in a row here, and if they can, I mean, even take 6 or 7 of them, I would think would probably still get them in. I would really hope. I really hope. I would hate to see this team only lose, anywhere from like 9 to 11, 12 games all year and not be ranked at any point. That would be really frustrating. But I mean, they're rolling. This is a great team. I don't think anybody expected them to really be quite this good this year. Especially off of pretty 500. I don't know their exact record from last season, but as we've said multiple times, just kind of around that 500 mark. To then be 30-9 in the next season is obviously pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, we're getting into a super exciting time in sports right here, coming down the stretch in softball and baseball, regular seasons here, golf coming down the stretch as well. And it's super exciting time. We've also got NFL draft right around the corner, a little over 2 weeks away now. And that's always an exciting time. I believe April 28th, maybe. Um, I'm looking for the OU Tech score real quick so we can get a score update before we get out of here.
I do believe it is the 28th. Yeah, the NFL draft.
Yeah, I believe
I
that's
look like
correct.
every day, and I always forget.
OU is now up or 12-9. Excuse me. Peyton Graham hits a solo home run. That is in the bottom of this, or in the top of the 8th. Excuse me. So, I mean, 6 more outs. I mean, can they get them? I don't know. I really don't. It's sad to say, but I have no idea. I really have no idea if they can get those finals.
Yeah, that's kind of the year it's been, for sure. But and one thing that's kind of weird about college baseball is they go like really long after like school gets out and everything. Usually like Division II and some of the lower levels kind of wrap up usually the week of finals or maybe like a week after. But Division I goes like really late. OU's last game is May 21st. I believe that's probably what two weeks after finals there.
That is that's 1 week exactly after final or after graduation, okay. I believe.
Yeah. So, obviously Division I goes a lot later than most. And so you won't get into the conference tournaments until like the last week of May, and then regionals, I think, are like first week of June. So got a ways for that, but still at this point, you're in the second half of the schedule now for baseball, and you've got to lock it down and fight for not only a better seed in your conference tournament, but also a potential at-large bid, because it's tough to win the Big 12. So
yeah, absolutely. And they need to get their bullpen figured out. If not, it's going to be an early postseason exit if they make it there, because that will bite them in the butt as they get further into the Big 12 schedule.
For sure. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that's all we've got for this week. Once again, we'll be back at it again next week. Go ahead and check us out on all of our social media pages, just at Fight Song Sports. You got Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. We're looking to upload a little bit more over there. And then, as always, we upload our episodes to, SoundCloud and YouTube, where you guys can watch and listen to both of those. We appreciate you guys for watching and listening, and we'll be back at it again next week for you guys.